Do shady thing, fire my boss, hide millions from your client? I don't think so. Posted by Texan Native 71. Forgive me if this is long, this happened a while ago, but it's still so fresh in my mind. I left college with a business degree in one hand and no job in the other. And like so many colleges, the promises of alumni willing to give jobs to graduates could not have been further from the truth. So I had to seek out my start from the bottom. I found a good job in operations at a company, I can't say who without giving it away. I had a great boss who taught me pretty much everything I needed to know. Work was great and the money was good. I need to explain how the business worked so you can understand how the plan worked. The corporate office was in California and we were not. There are a lot of things that went on at this company and I can't get into all of them because it would just take away from the story, but let's just say they had a very Stratton Oakmont vibe when it came to sales. I started out, worked in operations with some of the smaller clients, but with some help from my boss, I was able to climb the ladder rather quickly to the point of being over all the operations and order processing for the firm. We had a very large client, 90% of the company's business. The way it worked was we had two sets of sales reps, TSRs and CSRs. TSRs were the heavy hitters who reached out to the other big businesses and tech firms to extend their warranties on a product. They made real good money. The CSRs were more of the mom and pop crowd and the inbound sales calls for those that wanted to extend their warranties. The reps were all given codes that associates the client's files with theirs, so if someone did a renewal automatically, they would get paid as if it were their client. Pretty sweet gig. The client hired the firm to be the middleman for their B2B, business to business, as they handled all of their everyday clients. For every $100 that came into our firm, 18%, or $18, would be for the company and the rest would be sent to the clients with the warranties activated. Most of the clients paid by credit card or purchase order with a wire transfer, but there would also be a good amount of checks each week that would need to be processed. A little while after I started, the client check portion was now going to be overseen by one of the sales managers. Didn't really faze me because I was working on the smaller accounts. Since we were a publicly traded company, all the sales reps' orders had to go to operations to be fulfilled. They weren't allowed to process them on their own. This is when things started going downhill. My boss at the time was given temporary access to the financials as they were hiring a new CFO and he had a background with it. We went to lunch like we had done plenty of times before, but he seemed different. When I asked him if something was wrong, he told me that something looked off with our biggest client for one of the accounts. He wanted to make sure before he said anything to the higher-ups. While this was going on, I had been offered the chance to be our new compliance officer, which means I would need to make sure everything was on the up and up. Soon after, I come in to find out that my boss was just terminated for a multitude of reasons, all of which had to be untrue because he was a pretty well-liked guy with not just the company, but with our client as well. As I log into my terminal, I see that before he left, he had given me admin access to his files. Here's where things started to pop off. Remember those checks that the clients were sending in to renew their warranties? Well, we were cashing them all right. Apparently, we just weren't adding those renewals to their products in the system. That would have triggered a payout to our client who, as you remembered, would be getting 82% of that money. Instead, they were cashing the checks, keeping the money, and using the interest in the accounts, yes, in the mid-2000s banks actually paid interest, to cover losses in their collections department. It was wild to see that this was happening, and something had to be done. So, I hatched a plan. First things first, secure a new job because it won't be a fun place to work after this. Done. My previous boss knew of other companies that would scoop me up, put in my notice, and stated in my exit interview that I just couldn't be a part of what was happening, even though HR was in on this. I wanted it on the record. Next, get approval for overtime for all the operations crew to come in on a Saturday and double pay them. They arrive early Saturday, obviously not too thrilled as to why they are there. But when I explain that if they complete the task, not only do they get their overtime, but they get nice bonuses, they were much happier. They spent the entire day applying all of those checks dated back years to the client accounts. We're talking millions of dollars. When all the sales reps arrived Monday, they were shocked as heck. Not only did they meet their weekly goals before picking up the phones, they made their monthly and quarterly goals too. 2 weeks into the new quarter. Cheers, partying, yelling, screaming, celebrating. except sales management. They went from being really excited to skeptical, to confused, to oh crap in about 2 hours. They realized where it must have come from, because not only did the company hit all these sales, since it had been paid over a day, the client came into work Monday to see a very nice payday in their system as well. And, like anyone, would have questions, and says they are coming out to congratulate the team on such great numbers. So management starts scrambling because they can't figure out how this happened, and all under my boss's old login? On my last day, I arrive, and in the lobby, I've got my box for the last of my things and so on. Guy walks up as he's waiting for the elevator with me, and we strike up conversation. He notices my box and jokes about getting fired, and I just tell him I had a great opportunity come up, so I decided to leave before crap hits the fan. We laughed. Really nice down-to-earth guy. He realizes we are getting off on the same floor. He asks if I work for X, and I say yes. He asks where, and I tell him operations, and he reveals that he is the CEO of our client. Ooh, we go our separate ways. Client shows up, and there's a big party. Afterwards, the client says that they would love to get a breakdown of where most of the sales came from so they can allocate more money to that department. Management says, sure, but it made up a lie about how they can't share client payment info due to regulations, blah, 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 blah. Cue my exit from the company. 2 weeks go by, and I get a phone call from a number I don't recognize, so I let it go to voicemail. When I get off work, I checked it to find out it was the CEO of the client where I used to work. He, quote, has had something come up, end quote, and would like to talk to me. Of course, I'm nervous as heck, but I call him back and he picks up the phone on the first ring, and we get to chatting for a bit, and he finally just asked me, why did you leave? I tell him I had a great opportunity come up. He doesn't buy it, and he says that apparently my comment about crap hitting the fan really stuck with him, and he thinks something more is going on. So, after a little more prodding from him, I just tell him, just look at collections, and that's all I can say. He thanks me, and I hang up. 2 days later, he pulled the plug on the account. Apparently, my old company tried to threaten him with a lawsuit for pulling the account 3 years early. He replied with, that's fine, because I'll show the courts that I have evidence that you committed fraud. Corporate came in and cleaned house. All of management was fired within the day. 1 month later, my friends and I had a very memorable trip in Vegas, all courtesy of our old client. The epilogue. The best part. I guess this should have been part of the story. My old boss was an adopted kid and treated his adopted parents great, while their real kids didn't. And when they passed, they left him all their money. All of it. This was about 2008. He was in a weird place because he loved his parents and was really close to them. He went to church to pray for his parents and for what to do with this new landfall of money. He loved working, but didn't need to anymore. He left the church and went to a bar, because I mean, who doesn't? And he sits next to a guy who, and this is almost out of a movie, is a developer and has run out of money to finish his development because it's 2008, and no one is loaning money. They get to talking and he thinks, maybe this is a sign. I'll speed this up because I've got to run to work, but he invests in the guy's development by buying all the houses, dirt cheap at the time, and now lives off the residual income from all of them being rentals. Life sucks because so many people do crappy things and get away with it, that it's great when good things happen to good people. The best thing, man, about this ProRevenge with the side of malicious compliance is that it's all honest and truly and done by the book. You exposed the corruption and you did it in a wholesome manner, and then all the cards fell and you came out victorious. Way to go, OP. Client tried to screw me by locking me out of my own system, posted by Axel RAFN. I've worked as an independent contractor in the IT field for over 20 years, doing all manner of things from creating simple HTML sites to managing a big hotel's complete IT infrastructure. One of the many clients I had back in the day, I was coding big-ish custom websites, was a rental company. Now, I had heard a lot of warnings about not working with this guy that owned it. He had a reputation that was sharp as a tack, backstabbing and conniving. He was a lawyer after all. So I went into the partnership with that in mind. He wanted a new website for his renting gig, where people would list their home for rent, renters would sign up and pay a subscription to the site, and he would get the whole lot. Nothing out of the ordinary there. So we make a pretty good deal on paper, we sign it, and I get started on the project. Coding everything in PHP goes well, but he demands suddenly that I show him progress only a week into the project. He wants to see the website front now. This is just the tip of the iceberg. I tried explaining to him that the front-end work isn't scheduled to start until after 6 weeks of back-end programming, and that I only had pure code to show right now. The contract we signed clearly states this. He then gets on his high horse and demands that I put everything on hold to do the front-end first, design and then program. I, being really young at the time and fairly naive, agreed to this without asking for it to be added to the contract as an addendum and start working on the design now. Now, the contract stated that I was given free reign of the design decisions as long as I maintained the same color scheme and used the same logo on the site. So, I make a fast draft in Fireworks. This was back when it was a Macromedia product before the Adobe acquisition, and within 2 days, I show him. He's not impressed and demands a different direction and sets up a list of demands. I, as always, aim to please the customer and do just what he wants. I design a new layout with his list of demands, but he doesn't like that either. That's how the next 3 months go, a never-ending circle where he is never happy with anything. Now, close to 4 months into the project, he demands to see a working showcase of the back end. I point out that he himself changed the order in how the project was being done and had demanded that I do the front-end design first instead of the back end as stated in the contract, which he now turns on to me and says, "Yes, the contract we both signed says that you will have a working back end to show me at the end of the month. If you don't honor that, I will have to take my business elsewhere and seek compensation for your lack of professionalism." Okay, I now have 12 days to do a back end for the site. So, I get a friend to help me, and we work tirelessly through a weekend, and I have a good base to work from in 9 days. Mind you, at this point, he has only paid the security on the contract, which is about 5% of the total price, and has shielded himself from paying by hiding behind, "Well, if you can't honor the contract, why should I? Finish this work, and then I'll pay you as per the contract." Remembering now all the warnings I had heard about this guy, I decide to add a special function to the code, just to be safe. More on that later. So, now it's the end of the month, and we have a front-end design he is okay with, a back-end that has been finished to about 85% of what's required, according to the contract, and I still have 1 month left to finish everything else. Time for show and tell. Since I was working on this development, I was running it on my own dev server, and I showed him this in a browser on his computer. I mentioned to him that since I only had 512 kilobits per second upstream from the server, it might lag a little, but it wouldn't when it would be put on the productional server that he has his website on at his hosting company. He says that's okay, and the demonstration goes on. As I'm showing him the site, both front end and back end, I can see he's immensely happy with it, although he would never say so out loud. He's trying to hide a smile that pops up regularly, and his eyes gleam with all the added ways that he can start making money from. Anyway, he now says that it's way too slow. This is wrong, that is wrong, blah blah blah. I want you to put it up on my production server and see how the speed is. Okay, no problem, I can make that happen. Please pay 50% of the contract and I'll get right on it. Okay, I wait a few days and then I get an email from him where he includes a forwarded message from the bank detailing a transaction from him to me to the amount of the 50% I asked for. So I push the system to his production server so he can take a look at it. It's under beta, his domain.tld. I then send him an email stating that he can try the system with the supplied credentials. What he doesn't know is that I knew he had been fishing around for another programmer to do this project, to, quote, pick up from a lazy deadbeat who couldn't do anything right. So, I knew he would most likely try to screw me. What I also suspected was that the email he sent me with the transaction proof was a fake, which it ended up being. ProRevenge 1. Remember that small function I mentioned? Well, what it did was, if user X, his user, tries to remove user Y, my admin, from the system without one setting being changed in the config first, the system will first delete and purge the database, and then remove all the documents in the web root. Well, not 5 minutes after he reads the email from me, he does just that. He tries to delete my admin user from the system to lock me out. Guess who has nothing of the project left? He does. ProRevenge 2. Since it's considered forgery to spoof an email, especially from a bank, I sent the information to the authorities, and he goes under investigation by both the police and the bank lawyers. ProRevenge 3. I sold the system to a competitor of his for a better price than originally contracted to him, and last I knew, he was now blacklisted from owning a company, as well as he lost his right to work as a lawyer. I only got that 5% that he paid at the beginning, and for working for just over 5 months on this project, that's hardly anything. But the knowledge of his demise will keep my heart warm for the rest of my life. Wow, okay, when I was going through this story, I expected to get one, but not one, but two, but three ProRevenges packed into one, and it was all done properly. That's the best thing about it. Man, OP, I gotta give it to you 3 times in a row for that one. Be sure to comment the secret phrase below, triple whammy, and check out another video here. My name's Austin. Thanks for watching.